Thank you for joining me for the latest edition of Telile 24/7. My name's Adam Cook, and it's good to see you again after we were off last week. We're all ready to roll with brand new episodes of Telile 24/7, and we also have some special features for you concerning social distancing here in Nova Scotia and how the restrictions on social distancing have changed quite a bit since the last time the show was on the air. Let's take you outside now, because in Nova Scotia we have more opportunities to do that these days, and help break down what the new rules are that were introduced just this past week. Here's a look. The biggest change in Nova Scotia's social distancing restrictions was the introduction of the two-household family bubble. As the name implies, it allows members of families from two different households to be mutually exclusive to each other and to only travel to each other's properties. However, Premier Stephen McNeil had to issue a clarification on the term family bubble a day after the move was announced. Premier McNeil pointed out that members of immediate families need not be the only reason for getting together in a bubble, and he pointed out that people who aren't related to each other or are just friends would be allowed to be part of a bubble as well. Also, the Premier and Nova Scotia's Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Robert Strang, made it clear to Nova Scotians that large family gatherings such as family reunions are not permitted under the new easing of social distancing restrictions in the province. As a result of the new social distancing restriction easements, Nova Scotians got to see something over the long weekend that they hadn't seen for quite a while: the ocean and their favorite beaches. That's because the Nova Scotia government opened up public beaches as of Saturday, May the 16th. However, people still have to follow social distancing rules if they head down to catch some sun, surf, and sand. They have to stay 2 meters apart, and groups larger than 5 are still not permitted on the beachfronts. Now, you might recall that as part of the first round of easing of social restrictions here in Nova Scotia, yacht clubs like this one here in Port Hawkesbury were allowed to open. However, they were just opening to prepare for the coming season. Well, mariners around the Strait area and all across Nova Scotia got some great news as part of the second round of social distancing easing. That's because sailing, boating, and paddling are now permitted as part of the new rules for COVID-19 here in Nova Scotia. You can also take part in golf, tennis, archery, and equestrian sports. However, the province is maintaining that you can't have coaching programs for these activities, and yacht clubs like this one can't hold regattas for mariners and their boats. But the good news is that the activities I mentioned earlier can still take place as long as proper social distancing is maintained, and that the areas that are used on various sporting activities like the ones I just mentioned are kept clean and always maintained properly for the coming weeks. Now, you may remember that back at the Strait Area Yacht Club in that last segment, I mentioned golf as one of the activities that people can participate in here in Nova Scotia. And that's true. After a successful week-long experimentation in reopening driving ranges around the province, golf courses are now available for people to enjoy as well. However, the same social distancing rules apply, and if you go out and hit the links on one of your favorite courses anytime soon, don't expect to be able to celebrate afterwards with a campfire or a bonfire. That's because the provincial spring burn ban is still in effect and will stay that way until June the 1st. Now, individual homeowners can use small fire pits or chimeneas on their properties. However, the traditional burn ban is going to stay into effect until June, so don't expect to be able to enjoy a campfire or a bonfire for another couple of weeks. In addition to these social distancing restrictions, we'd like to give you an update on the number of coronavirus cases here in Nova Scotia. As of noon on Wednesday, May the 20th, there were 1,045 confirmed cases of coronavirus here in the province. That, unfortunately, includes 57 deaths, of which 50 were found at the Northwood Long-Term Care Facility in the Halifax Regional Municipality. However, there is some positive news to report. The number of COVID-19 cases that are fully recovered here in Nova Scotia is 956 as of Wednesday, May the 20th. That means that the gap between the number of total cases in Nova Scotia and the number of recoveries is under 100, and that's been the case since last Friday. Right now, I'm on the Port Hawkesbury waterfront. Things have changed quite a bit over the last couple of months with COVID-19 social distancing rules sweeping through. However, that hasn't stopped town officials from continuing to prepare for their yearly budget and doing other things to carry out business in the town while providing services to its residents. To get an update on all of this, I spoke to Port Hawkesbury Mayor Brenda Chisholm-Beaton. Let's go to that interview right now. And we're very pleased to be joined on Telile 24/7 once again by the Mayor of Port Hawkesbury, Brenda Chisholm-Beaton. It's been 2 months into the pandemic and Town Council has had to find a way to work things out. How are you folks doing as you get through all of this, and how are you personally doing?
Well, I guess we'll start with the town. The town quickly came together to discuss and write a pandemic plan, and council has gone through the steps to reviewing and approving that pandemic plan. Our senior staff have put together a pandemic committee. They've been meeting Monday through Friday, certainly for the first month and a half, and now they're meeting 2 or 3 days a week. Our council have been getting weekly updates most Mondays, and when we can't meet on Monday, we've been getting updates at either our public meetings or our committee of the whole. So certainly we have done our best to observe and follow the public health mandates that have been coming forward from the province, from Dr. Strang and his team with the province of Nova Scotia and the Premier, of course. And we've certainly been trying to do our best, working with our citizens and working with businesses to do the best that we can during these times of uncertainty and certainly around the pandemic and around health and safety.
Well, let me ask you, just as we're talking about this, how do you feel people in Port Hawkesbury have been doing? I mean, obviously, there's been a lot changed, and in just the last couple of weekends, we've seen a little easing of social restrictions. But just in terms of what you've seen in and around the town, how do you feel that residents are doing in terms of following social distancing restrictions and just basically being respectful of each other during these difficult times?
Well, certainly considering the fact that this is we've never experienced a pandemic before. This is all new territory, new terrain. I do believe personally that our citizens and our businesses have been tremendous. They have been doing a really great job complying to the public health mandates and doing their best to continue to do the things that need to be done. Our frontline workers have been absolutely tremendous and amazing. I always like to refer to them as heroes without capes, but some of them wear uniforms. Some of them are frontline service workers. Some of them are in healthcare, and some of them are driving trucks to make sure that supplies get to each of our communities. And the list goes on. Our frontline workers have really made the transition a lot easier for citizens and certainly for businesses. And we really appreciate the fact that despite the mandates around isolating and staying the blazes home as much as possible, folks in our town have just had an incredible sense of spirit. Certainly walking around town, walking for exercise has been an activity that has had a lot of uptake around town. And for example, in walking around town, you'll see this beautiful rock art all over town. And it's just an absolute wonderful testament to the fact that as a town, we are faced with a lot of uncertainty, with a lot of restrictions, but it certainly hasn't broken the spirit here in the town of Port Hawkesbury.
And it hasn't hurt that in the latest round of easings for social restrictions, there have been some things that have been going on that have really fed into the town's assets. And I think of the idea that trail systems have been opened up, that a lot of public spaces are slowly reopening right now. Can you speak a little bit to that and about the idea that residents around here are enjoying a chance to get out and see some things and see some people that they haven't seen in quite a while?
Absolutely. So with regard, I guess I could comment on Some items that have always been open that hasn't changed, of course, amid the abet some changes with regard to public uh, health mandates and ensuring a physical distance of 6 feet. Our trails have always been open throughout the whole pandemic process. Trailheads at some point, though, the trailheads were closed for parking, but if citizens could walk to trails, they were certainly welcome to use those. And there were some accommodations made on our trails. So many of our trails are on a one-way loop, so that users won't have to backtrack and meet up face to face with other users, so that folks, our hikers are certainly able to follow the loop. And of course, our parks are still closed. Some of the new loosening of restrictions have seen our pump track open for use, and I've driven by a few times, and it's nice to see kids are there using it, and of course, respecting the distancing protocols as well, which is nice to see. Most recently, folks are driving up to the community grounds. We'll also see that tennis will be open for use as of today. I believe our staff are hanging the nets and preparing that for use. And unfortunately, our playground is still closed, as is our all sports court for basketball. And our fields right now are temporarily closed for maintenance. So we're looking at repairing turf and preparing those fields for days that aren't so rainy and muddy. So other than that, it's there. Of course, I feel that as time goes on and as the province begins to prepare for more loosening of restrictions, the town will continue to observe and make those amendments as need be.
Well, I'm glad to see that recreation is starting to slowly unfold around town, and people are getting the chance to do this. And I'm wondering if you could speak to a partnership that the town has struck with the local Canadian Tire outlet. Can you speak to a bit about that and what the thinking was in terms of partnering with a local business to get these recreation items out to people?
Absolutely. I guess I would start by um, I guess sharing my gratitude and appreciation to both Canadian Tire here in town, as well as Dora Construction. They've come together in collaboration with the town of Port Hawkesbury to try to level the playing field, so to speak, with regard to some families who may not have access to outdoor recreation activities, or the basic kind of items that they would need to encourage a healthy outdoor lifestyle and to encourage some active participation outside of the household. Certainly hockey pads and a hockey net are amongst the many items that families can borrow from the town of Port Hawkesbury for a week's time. And these items will be delivered to families on Tuesdays, then picked up the following Monday. Really interesting items that I've never even heard of before. So I'm sure citizens and families will be quite excited to participate. And it is leveling the playing field a little bit, because not all families can afford to purchase those types of items to be able to engage outdoors. And certainly with the financial burden that has been presented throughout the pandemic, this is something that the town feels very proud to be able to participate in.
Let's look ahead a little bit past what will be a difficult summer for Port Hawkesbury, with events like the Granville Green Concert Series being shut down, the Festival of the Strait not operating as well too. But as we look to the fall, we recently got confirmation from the Provincial Minister of Municipal Affairs that municipal elections in October are indeed going ahead as scheduled. The Minister, Chuck Porter, has challenged municipalities across the province to try to find ways to hold these elections. Can you give me your immediate response as mayor, and whether you feel Port Hawkesbury can take up this challenge in the fall?
Well, I think your use of vocabulary in your description is correct. It certainly is going to be a challenge. That's a very good word choice, Adam. And of course, the main message I could leave citizens with and yourself with is that this was a decision that came forward from the Minister of Affairs, Minister Chuck Porter. The reality that it presents as a result of that decision is that municipalities now will have to explore safe and democratic ways to ensure that this election goes forward. The challenge being that the traditional ways that candidates have campaigned, some of those strategies are just not going to be feasible amidst a global pandemic. Some other I guess thoughts that I could offer on my behalf. Of course, I can only represent my own perspective on it. I don't want to speak on behalf of council or any other municipal person. But my thoughts are that because we will have to be creative, because we will not be able to perhaps employ the same traditional campaigning methods as used in the past, that this will present an incredible disadvantage to new folks putting their name forward for municipal election. Many citizens will be very cold to the idea of someone showing up and knocking on their door to speak to them in person. So it's certainly it changes the water on the beans altogether, and there's a lot of important conversations that need to take place as a result. E-voting is not something that every municipality has capacity with. There's cost associated with that, Adam. And we know in conversations we've had with other municipalities that many municipalities are already facing a lot of financial burden as lost revenues and COVID-19, challenges for businesses, for citizens to be able to pay their portion of the next cycle. Add to that the cost of e-voting could present its challenges. So that's one hope, that I really do hope that because the decision has come forward from the province, that they'll be willing to help prepare us for a safe election that's democratic and safer candidates, safer our constituents, and safe all around.
Brenda, continuing on the topic of getting new candidates involved in municipal elections, I know that you were one of the key organizers for the Government Focus Group's Leadership School for Women that was scheduled to take place this month to be able to encourage new female candidates for the upcoming municipal elections and band council elections around Cape Breton Island and northeastern Nova Scotia. Obviously, with COVID-19, that's not happening, but I do understand that there is going to be an online version of this leadership school coming in August. Can you tell us about why you feel it's important to be able to proceed with this program for female candidates at this time?
I think it's going to be important to kind of create a program, and really it's kind of like we're making history, so to speak, because we have this opportunity to create a program amidst this global pandemic that will match perfectly with the reality or the best that we can aim for with COVID-19. So we're essentially going to be writing new material to provide to participants to assist them with running an election with COVID-19 as a reality, and hope that will help our participants. And I'm not sure if there are any kind of learning opportunities or training opportunities that will be provided by the province for any general men and women who may be interested in municipal. Sometimes there are campaign schools that occur. So I'm not sure if there is a provincial plan to be able to provide kind of training. I haven't heard that will be happening, but that may still be happening. It's not certain. But we will be looking at having modules made for the women who participate in our school. So perhaps some of those modules can be made available on our website and really can be viewed by anybody interested.
Have the dynamics changed for this female leadership school, Brenda? Are the candidates that were interested in coming on board still interested in doing that with all the changes that have happened as a result of COVID-19?
We should know in the weeks to come, though time will tell whether or not that interest is still there. So we definitely will be discussing some options should connectivity be an issue or a barrier for participation. So we are looking at some other options. Again, from our traditional plan of the school that we were wanting to hold, our mantra has been to try to remove as many barriers as possible, and we still want to honor that mantra as much as we can, and enable women as much as we can, so that they can channel their inner leader, whether they want to run in the municipal election, another election, be involved in any way, or just be a leader in their community.
So we've covered a lot of ground in just a short time, Brenda, and I appreciate you taking some time for me today. Did you want to add anything else about all of this, or just your overall perspective as to where we are now, just before we wrap up?
I just like to thank citizens from all around the Strait region, from all around Cape Breton and Unama'ki, for staying the course, and for everybody doing their part. Look at what the world looked like this time last year. We're almost doing the opposite of what we knew to be what was best for people's mental health, and it was being social, getting out, and certainly not being cooped up in your household. So it's definitely a different time and place. You know, people could have been struggling, and have been persevering. And we're all going to come forward with a better idea of who we are as Nova Scotians and what we truly value as a result of all of this. So I'm glad to see that we share that perspective as well. Brenda, thank you so much for giving us some time here on Telile 24/7. We really appreciate you checking in with us again. My pleasure. I'm a big fan of. All right, no trouble at all. We've been speaking with Mayor Brenda Chisholm-Beaton of the town of Port Hawkesbury. She's been speaking to us by Skype from her beautifully painted kitchen at home. Stay tuned for more Telile 24/7 in just a moment. One thing we've all learned from COVID-19 is not only has the pandemic changed the way that work is carried out and the way that our own recreation and daily lives are carried out in this neck of the woods, but it's also had a great emotional impact, especially here in Nova Scotia, where there have been so many other difficult events going on over the past month. So one of the things that we've been doing in our interviews with various public figures on Telile 24/7 is asking them how they and their families are coping with the stresses and the various differences that have come about as a result of social distancing and the restrictions that are in effect here in Nova Scotia. Let's hear some of those personal experiences right now.
I guess that starts back in January. You know, I was starting to hear this personally on the news, international news about this pandemic. And I didn't dismiss it. As the news continued late in and then I took a trip myself in February, a personal trip. And when I came back from that trip, that was around February 18th to the 20th. And I came back with a different view, because the screening that we went through during that trip, you know, it was aboarding a cruise ship down in Miami, and the screening was very robust, and the cleaning practices on board. So when I came back from that trip, the gravity of the pandemic was very heightened for me as opposed to when I left.
I try not to freak out because like at first when this all happened, like I was really being affected by people's fear. Like whether you're afraid of this pandemic or not, it was just people's reaction to the fear that was freaking me out. And so a lot of it is having to stop and refocus and think of those things that are good.
We're living in interesting times. It's scary times. It's anxiety-ridden times. And at the same point, I think we're living in a time of innovation here, responding to this crisis. One of economic innovation, but one of social innovation. And we realize, and certainly I realize, that, you know, we have much more to do.
As a Chamber of Commerce, former ED, it's difficult for me to be saying, stay home, but at the end of the day, you really need to be doing that as much as possible. And so, the duration of this thing is key. The impacts will increase if it starts to drag on and on and on into the summer and into the fall.
Because I have to be mindful that I'm not stepping into people's bubbles, because I have a tendency to do that, right? When you're talking to somebody, it's like, oh, how are you? And you get really close, and it's like, no, you got to keep your distance.
I think we're all going to be extremely happy, and there's going to be like a mad rush on, hairdressers when we're done, because I'm looking at my hair and I'm thinking to myself, how did it get this long? So I definitely need a chop on this end, as well as, you can't see him, but my puppy is down here. I've got a 8-year-old little silky terrier, and he's starting to look like a Highland cattle.
It's impacted just about everything we do, but we continue to find modifications and ways around it. And so far, I think we're in pretty good shape, Adam.
I'm a big believer that necessity is the mother of invention, and nobody is more inventive than a small business owner making sure that their business survives the storm. And I have been absolutely shocked to see the level of compassion and inventiveness, the innovations coming from businesses as they are, number one, working to protect the health and safety of their customers and their employees. And number two, ensuring their own business continuity by making changes to their business model. And so, I see so many who are approaching this situation with those two lenses, health and safety and business continuity. And it's just amazing.
I think it's just confirming for me what I knew. I knew that I had a team that would choke up when I needed them to. I knew I had a team that was creative and could pivot when they needed to. I knew that people could quickly learn new procedures and and for me, it's been good because it's really promoted the succession planning that I've been speaking to. That was a risk, and I think we'll take away that some of this pivoting and adapting and really reaching and working with less and being resourceful has always been done in Mulgrave, and that it's confirmed for me that we can continue as a solid team. So, and it's pushed the electronic side. So yeah, I think it's just confirming us what we knew the town was made of in the first place. So I'm really happy to be part of it.
I think of the calls I have weekly with Richmond County. And I think of the questions that come from counselors in the warden. I think of, in particular, Brian Marchand, who asks so many great questions that are designed to make us think.
I have aging parents and in-laws, and for myself, I visit my parents every day. There's not a day that goes by I don't drop in and visit my parents. They don't live far, and I know my children are having that discussion with me that I need to stop that because going to work, we don't know who's around that has this. And some of those people don't even know. We're hearing that some people don't show the symptoms early and yet can be carriers. There's a lot not known about this virus, but the numbers are staggering for, how many people, I guess, have contracted this, how many people have died. Within Canada, I think the number 89 so far. So this is real. I mean, you're listening about other countries in the world that are just being overwhelmed with this. And for me, it's, do you visit your parents? Do you not? If they fall sick, you blame yourself, because I tell my parents, just keep away from whoever you can.
I'm included in that. I miss my mother terribly. She's on lockdown right now. She's in her mid-80s. So all of us are in the same boat. We have people that we love that we're trying to protect. And we need to continue to be diligent in making certain that we have to understand that this virus, as much as we're flattening that curve, where it's not going away. So it's not going away anytime soon, and we have to make certain that we don't have another, rise or spike, obviously, in that curve in a second and third wave.
I've seen the good and the bad, and I've seen some ugly. But the good is far outweighs the bad. It certainly far outweighs the ugly. And I'm really proud of the people of this riding. It's that spirit that, there is something to living in rural Canada, and there is something about knowing your neighbor, and there is something knowing about helping your neighbor that happened before COVID. And now we're seeing what people will do for their neighbor, what they will do for a stranger.
I just want to say I'm so proud of everyone for their volunteer work, for continuing to be very kind to one another, compassion. And, I'm a little bit biased, but I have to say, Nova Scotia is an amazing province, and Cape Breton Islanders, you're top notch. You're top notch.
Lots of hugs I'll be given after this, because I miss that. I miss that. Yeah.
They can all come to the Corner Bridge Outlet Store after the pandemic is over. One free hug from Pastor Janelle every time. Same deal applies at Reach Church too, yes.
Life supply of hugs.
Yes.
Free.
Hugs are free. And that wraps up this week's edition of Telile 24/7. I'd like to thank everybody who assisted me with this week's program, including my friends at Telile Community Television who helped me get the show on the air. A special thanks to business manager Cora LeBlanc for her assistance this week. And once again, I'd like to give a special thank you to my location manager, Kathy Cook. Yep, that's my wife, Kathy, for helping me with some of the exterior shots this week. As well, I'd like to let you know that you can follow Telile Community Television on several social media networks. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and on YouTube. Not only can you see every single episode of Telile 24/7, including this one, but now we're starting to put up individual stories and interviews from Telile 24/7. You can click on those and check out your favorite highlights from the show, as well as lots of other informative, interesting, and entertaining productions by Telile from recent weeks. I'm Adam Cook. Thank you for joining me once again for Telile 24/7. I look forward to seeing you again very soon.